Great. Welcome, everybody, to the February 22nd, 2018 Board of Selectmen, Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting. We'll ask if our town administrator would please read the meeting agenda, and we can vote to accept the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll read the reading of the agenda and vote to amend or approve the agenda. There are two items that need to come off. That's the farm pond dock replacement under capital items and police department capital items. And those would be moved to the next meeting. Then a period of public comment, and then Eagle Scout proclamations for Theodore Allen Davidson, David Nathaniel Kennan, and Edward Whittlesley. And ratification of AFSCME Council 93, Local 335, CM&D Union Memorandum of Agreement. Then Grange Fair update with George Fisk. Under financial matters, library accounts payable warrant with finance director, signing of general obligation bonds and bond anticipation note with the treasurer. Then 2018 annual town meeting items, town meeting procedural items with the moderator, consideration of town meeting warrant and various articles, warrant signing posting timeline, NOI for amend general bylaws chapter 5 section 3 regarding registration and licensing requirements for dogs with the town clerk, and then an NOI for Board of Selectmen member and eligibility for employment with resident George Shea. Then consideration of capital items with Dover Sherborn Regional School District, Andrew Keogh Superintendent and Claire Graham Chair of Dover Sherborn Regional School Committee, and signing of the intergovernmental agreement. Then CM&D Capital with Sean Colleen, CM&D Director, and then Town Buildings with Sean Colleen, CM&D Director. Actually, he called me just before the meeting. Town Buildings he wants to remove as well.
Okay.
So police, farm pond, and town buildings would be removed.
Okay.
Consideration of omnibus budget and departmental budgets. Town buildings with Sean Colleen, and then CM&D budget with Sean Colleen.
Are we removing that town buildings too, or not?
I believe that was on there. It was just the capital items that we're moving.
Okay, so that's still on. Fantastic.
Under routine business, town administrator, report and consideration of payroll warrant, and selectmen items, reports, and minutes from December 19th, 2017, January 11th, 2018, January 25th, 2018, and then set next meeting dates, and then an executive session. The board may return to open session. It's MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21-2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel for the CM&D Director / Facilities Manager Employment Agreement for Sean Colleen. That's the end of the
Do you have a
reading.
motion to approve the agenda with the changes that the TA noted?
Sure, so moved.
Okay, Mr. Durensis, Mr. Yan, all in favor? Aye, okay, start with a unanimous vote, that's good. Diane, do we have any public comment?
None.
Okay. Administrative matters, Eagle Scout proclamations, we have a specialist in this on the board. I'll turn the proceedings over to Mr. Durensis to read the proclamations.
All three proclamations are the same, except for the names are different. So these proclamations are for three individuals: Theodore Allen Davidson, David Nathaniel Kennan, and Edward
Charles Edward Whittlesley.
I don't have Charles in mine, mine just says Edward.
It's on the proclamation.
Okay. And the proclamations read as follows. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Town of Sherborn, a proclamation. Whereas, and then one of these three names appears, has earned the rank of Eagle Scout, and whereas his accomplishment symbolizes his creative examples of service, strong leadership, and organizational skills which have made a difference in our community. And whereas, then the name, has demonstrated his ability to set a goal and exhibited a personal desire and tenacity to follow through successfully. Now, therefore, we, the Selectmen of the Town of Sherborn, on behalf of all its citizens, extends their congratulations and best wishes on this occasion of the Eagle Scouts Award Ceremony. In witness whereof we have caused the seal of this town to be affixed to this proclamation on the 22nd day of February in the year 2018. And then follows the signatures of the board. I move that we adopt all three proclamations.
Okay,
Second.
second, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Paul, for that, and we can pass those around and sign them. So next item is ratification of the CM&D union agreement. This is not a contract, this is a memorandum of agreement, which the board met in executive session at the end of our last meeting to review this agreement and voted to adopt it and sign it. And it's a public document now, but it provides for the terms through the end of this fiscal year with CM&D in anticipation that we would be negotiating the formal contract with the union in accordance with this agreement. Do you have anything to add on that, David?
No, we just begin negotiating the longer-term agreement immediately.
I would say, though, that I think at this point we have agreements in effect with all of our major operating unions. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I move, well, I guess we've already done it, so you just.
We were just going into public session to announce it. That,
So we don't need a motion.
I don't think we do. I think that we just wanted to make sure the public was advised about it. And I'm trying to sign my name and think at the same time. All right, great. We've got a Grange Fair update with George Fisk. Yeah, thank you, George. That'd be great.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for letting me come in to see you tonight. I'm not sure update is the right word to attribute to this. What I'm really here to do is to ask your permission to allow me to move forward with holding a Grange Fair this year. I think most, if not all of you, are aware that over the last, well, since 1999, there have been Grange Fairs. The Grange Fair of 1999 was the first one that we had held down at the Barber Reservation, and it was a part of a much larger celebration. That whole year of 1999 was the town's 325th anniversary since incorporation. But the Grange Fair was a big hit. People enjoyed it, and we found an excuse to do it again in 2002, which our excuse was that it was the 350th since settlement, so-called. And then in 2011, we didn't have an excuse. We just wanted to do it. And so we've held it 3 times in the last 19 years down at the Barber Reservation, and each time, each one was a little different, but they were all very successful. They were it's a community event. It doesn't take place very often. It's when you can really muster up enough excitement and desire for people to jump in and help. So I will tell you, I have met with the Conservation Commission and received their approval. I did that because the Barber Reservation is technically conservation land under the custody and care of the Conservation Commission. And they were unanimous support of our holding the event. We have a date in mind, and that is Saturday, September 15th. We have an organizational meeting planned shortly that presumes that you will approve my moving forward with it. And we have a lot of preparation that needs to be done between now and September 15th. But I do look forward to it as being a really a wonderful community event. I will tell you that one of the things that we'll do a little differently this year than we did last go-around, and Paul, you may remember, but we did solicit funds from various organizations to help underwrite the Grange Fair, and we utilized an account here that the town had. So we ran through the town's books the funds that were used to both the monies that we received as well as the expenditures. This year, we do not plan on running through the town's books. It's a little more complicated, and we find we really don't need to do that. Now, what I also want to tell you is that this is going to be underwritten by something known as the Sherborn Fund, which you may know of. I hope you do, but if you don't, I think there are many people who don't, and we want very much to try to make people in town aware of the Sherborn Fund. It was really set up in the mid-1990s, about 1994 initially, and it was set up as something that would be meaningful and actually was a part of the 1999 effort. And we thought about setting up a foundation or a private endowment that would benefit Sherborn organizations, nonprofits. And what we did determine over the next several years was that we felt that the better course would be to set up a named fund at what is now called the Foundation for Metro West. And the Foundation for Metro West is based in Natick. It is the community foundation for this region of the state. It's essentially the community foundation between Boston and Worcester. There is the Boston Foundation, and there's a Worcester Community Foundation. And so we have established a named fund there. There are some dollars that we've spent from time to time to help underwrite relatively small projects in town, but ones that we all thought were worthwhile. So in an effort to try to gain more recognition of the Sherborn Fund has agreed with my encouragement to underwrite the expense of the Grange Fair. And so that's really it in a nutshell. I think it might make sense for me to come back at least one more time, but again, as we get further down the line and knowing exactly what we are planning on doing and how we're going to do it, that you might very well be interested, and I'd love to be able to give people in TV land the opportunity to hear more about what we are doing. So happy to answer questions.
Great, thanks. I think Paul seems like he has one.
Well, it's not so much a question as an enthusiastic yes to the idea of another Grange Fair. I think these are wonderful community-building events. They bring people together. I've noticed that there's been some turnover in the town with a lot of new people, so this is a great opportunity for people to bond, to get to know their neighbor. It's a wonderful event. I would want to encourage you, by all means, to have this event, and anything that we can do to help make that a success, I, for one, and I think the board would be more than happy to support.
Wonderful. That's what I want to hear.
Chuck?
A quick question. The motion is to approve the holding the Grange Fair at the Barber Reservation for 3 dates, the 14th, the 15th, which is the actual date, and the 16th. Is that for set up and tear down?
Yes.
Okay. And I have proudly framed a poster, I think, from the 1999 Grange Fair. Is that the year you all did a?
We've done posters for each years. If you'd like another one, I think I might still have
Yeah,
one.
I
You're
know. I think I have
welcome
the-
to purchase at a reasonable price.
That's, your definition of reasonable is what has me worried, George, but, yeah. Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of the Sherborn Fund to hold another Grange Fair at the Barber Reservation on September 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2018.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll just comment and say I was a winner at the first Grange Fair for my prize eggplant, which won a Best in Show.
That's
Although
why you
my-
are
my
where you
kid-
are
so-
today.
So I do, yeah, well, so I do want to hold another one. And my kids lost in the cat competition. The cat was traumatized for life. So this is a really good community event, and I would wholeheartedly endorse it as well. So we've got a motion and a second. All in favor? There we go. Thanks, George.
Thanks very much for letting me come
Thanks for all you do for the town. This is
Oh,
great.
It's fun. It's fun.
Okay, our treasurer Heidi Doyle and a bond is next, I think.
There's the library update.
Oh, you waiting for Carol? Okay, Carol has to witness, so we'll move on to the next item, which would be Mary Wolf, town moderator.
You missed,
Right.
you missed Sharon.
Oh, Sharon's here. Oh, good. Okay, she didn't have any papers in the pile. Here you go, Sharon.
This one.
This is this thing? All right, great, good. Not that one, this one? All right, good, go ahead. Thanks, George.
It's the basic overview of how we're running on the project.
How are we doing on the project?
So if you go to the second page, I added this new schedule. And this is, the project manager was able to provide me with a burn rate of what he predicted we're going to be spending from January through August. And then he's predicting that we'll spend almost 5.8 million between January and August. And as you can see in the next column, I'm actually comparing what we've actually spent to what his burn rate is, and we're running behind.
It's not necessarily a good thing, it's just,
No, it's just, yeah, so they're
Reflects the
predicting at this
project.
point we'd be at about 1.3, we're only at 640. And the other thing I just want to point out is, so based on his burn rate and the expenses we've incurred to date, the current forecast is 8.6 million, and I just wanted to point out that we do have that funding. We have gifts of 3.7, almost 3.8 million, grants of 3.746, interest, we have the bond of $1 million, and then free cash that was voted at the last town meeting. So right now, things are tracking fine.
okay.
That's basically it. Any questions?
No, this is great, though, this is
Okay.
really clear.
Okay, good.
Very helpful, this second sheet. too.
Okay, all right, so I'll do that every meeting.
Yeah, that's great, thanks, Sharon. And so now it's Mary with her budget.
So, I'm back. Am I on?
Yes.
You're on, Mary.
Great. So, in preparation for a town meeting, hoping to do a little bit of streamlining so that things don't go on and on for hours and hours unnecessarily. And one of the things I'd like to do is implement a consent calendar for articles that have passed either unanimously or with very strong margins over the last 10 years. And I had given you guys a spreadsheet there with the record of the articles that have passed. I would make one change to what I had on there. I had funding OPEB outside of the funding that we do through line 990 of the omnibus budget. But just today, I realized that that has to pass by 2/3. When I had included it originally, I was thinking of the Municipal Modernization Act, which no longer requires 2/3 for deposits into stabilization funds. But I think, and maybe one of you knows otherwise, but I think that the trust still requires a 2/3 vote to deposit into. And that's also why I've left unpaid bills out, because unpaid bills requires 4/5 to pass. And I think if any article in the consent calendar requires a particular margin to pass, they all do. So, you know, I don't want to set the bar that high.
Yeah, start us off with just an easy one,
Right.
and then we'll move on to the
Yeah,
next one. So it sounds like a great idea to me, Mary.
so.
Certainly it'll take a little time off town meeting.
Right, and I also gave you a proposed order, but I don't really care what the order is, as long as they're consecutive, so that I can deal with them all first thing.
So when you say a proposed order, you're talking about a proposed order of consent calendar items
Yes.
at the beginning of the
At the beginning of the meeting, and some of them, a lot of them have preceded the omnibus anyway, but a couple of them, like the cemetery article, and were later on, and so, you know, if you want to do it, however it is, I'd like to see those, wherever you want to put them, doesn't matter to me. I would like to see the ones that I've put there grouped together, so that I can do it as a consent calendar.
And these are not articles that typically we have presentations on. Right?
They are, well, no, like, last year we did a presentation on the bond premiums, but I think that's becoming a typical article now.
Was there a report read last year too? That was like the one,
Boy, there may have,
I think last year
been.
Roger Demler or was somebody?
yes, and that was an very unusual
That's right.
case.
Yeah, that was more just a cameo for
Right,
Roger, so we
right.
could figure out a way to talk about
Right.
Right.
water and
Yeah.
sewer.
And a couple years
Exact-
ago, I think the governance task force was presented as a as a report, if I remember correctly.
Right, but we don't have that this year,
Right,
so.
yep.
Anyway, that's, that was my thinking, and if we can do it, that'd be great.
So Mary, on this 9 items, you would say now to pull the OPEB,
I think
item
so,
out and put it-
unless one of you knows differently, but I think I'm correct about that.
so that would put it down with unpaid bills and omnibus
Right.
budget, okay.
Well, I would urge you to leave them all in on the following basis. Number one, most towns have this consent agenda, and
Right.
I've been through them many times. I've attended 1,214 town meetings,
Yeah.
and most of them have this, and they usually throw this stuff in. So you might say, why do they throw in articles that require more than a majority vote? It's because if anybody objects to an item being on the consent agenda,
Yes.
it comes off anyway. So the
Okay.
usual process is the moderator says, here's our consent agenda, does anybody have any objection? If there's no objection, you know you have a unanimous vote. You can get them all done.
Well,
If somebody objects and says they want to discuss an unpaid bill for $39.25, you can pull that out
okay,
and deal with the rest. But if you know it's going to be a majority vote, why
yeah,
this
I mean,
distinction between 2/3, 4/5, majority?
they haven't all been majority. There have been some, but they've been almost majority. I mean, I'm sorry, not majority, unanimous. They haven't always all been unanimous.
Right, but I'm suggesting that it's procedurally, the way it
Yeah.
happens in most of the towns that I've attended. The moderator says, here's the proposed consent agenda. Is there anybody with an objection?
Mm-hmm,
And usually you get silence.
that's
At
great.
which point you know you're gonna get a
Yeah.
unanimous vote. If somebody raises their hand and says, I object to the unpaid bill one,
Right,
then take that out.
okay. I mean, I don't have a strong feeling about it. I was just trying to do what I thought might fly, the first time through, so, I don't know.
I've only been to 2% of the town meetings that Paul has been to, but I think that's a great suggestion, just
Okay.
leave them all in there.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm fine with that. I just, as I say, trying to make it as non-controversial as possible. So,
Sounds great.
okay.
So you had 2 items up here, but you kind of covered both of them at once, didn't you?
No, well, no.
No?
No. The other one is for the reading of the omnibus.
Okay.
Typically, we have read planning board salaries, planning board expenses, board of selectmen salaries, board of selectmen expenses. With the passage of the Municipal Modernization Act, there's no longer a cap on year-end transfers. And you can transfer between salaries and expenses. So in effect, even though we're calling these line items separately, people are really, in reality, they're voting one amount per department. And again, it's simply a time-saving measure to read planning board and dollars instead of planning board salary and dollars, planning board expenses and dollars. Now, the advisory committee report will still contain the breakout of salary and expenses. And so anyone can put a hold on a line item if they object to one part of it or the other, and they can simply speak to that as they would if everything were read. So again, it's just the idea of, can we go through this? I know that, quickly, I know that a lot of towns do it this way, that they read only the one item. In fact, some towns will break things out in terms of general administration, health and safety, protection, what is it, fire, police, and, they're even all, protection of life and property, I guess it's called. They are all lumped together. I don't think we want to go that far. But I think providing the people with the advisory report gives them all the information they need, and then we can just read one line item, and that's it.
You're really
So,
shaking things up.
Trying not to, but, I-
Chuck?
What do you, To me, it makes sense, but do you think there's gonna be any pushback just because that's the way we've always done it? I mean, do
So,
you have any
yeah.
sense of that?
So I do have a sense of it. I've run this, I've sort of beta tested the idea with people who've just kind of met around town. And almost everybody has said the same thing to me. Great idea, but make sure everybody knows about it ahead of time. So here I am. I know there are millions of people watching this tonight, so I'm telling all of them. I've talked to some people on the COA, and I'm hoping to go to the COA and say, to one of their meetings and say, here's what I'm thinking about, here's what we're going to do, don't be surprised. I'm hoping to use some social media to get the word out to everybody that this is what's going to be happening at this meeting, and this is why, and you're still going to have all the opportunities that you've had all along to do this, so.
Does the advisory report break out, it breaks out salaries and expenses, and then it gives a total for the department?
That's correct, so I would only read the total.
Okay. So nobody has to do math?
No, least of all me.
Arithmetic.
I think this is a great idea, as I've told you before. A lot of younger people newer to town have been talking about, is there any way to make this faster? Because it's painful to sit through some of these items, and I think this and the previous item are just great ways to keep people interested.
Yeah, and I'll put in a plug for the two things that happened at the special town meeting, which were the vans for the seniors and the babysitting for the young folks. I think that also is great, so.
I think snacks would be good, too.
I would love
If we're gonna go that
snacks.
long,
I would love snacks.
Talk to Barb Cantor.
Yeah, there you go.
You have to be careful about babysitting for children. There's a host of legal problems. You need licenses, Cory checks, there's all kinds of liability that goes
Well,
with
this
it.
was organized outside of town government. This was a group of people that got together, so.
Yeah,
Special town, I'm,
there was concerns, maybe you and I should talk offline about,
well, I don't want to be the person spearheading this at all. I was going to talk to the people who did it the last time and say, hey, nice job.
so you don't want to be town moderator and running the babysitter
Well, you know,
service
I-
at town meeting?
I'm not. Never mind, George.
All right, okay, so do you want to vote on this? What do you want? Just
I'm just looking for
looking
your,
for the
you know, your
sense,
general
because it's kind of,
support.
it's kind of your thing.
It is.
Yeah.
But I want to work with people, so,
I'm in favor of it.
yeah.
Kitty Sturgis.
Quite frankly, I'm not in favor of it. I think we're spending $20 million plus. It doesn't hurt to spend 5 or 10 minutes more to read the different line items. And you could ask for consensus at the end of this year's omnibus budget and say, and if you've got consensus that people would like to see it condensed to the one line item, fine. But I think, I personally would like to see all the lines read.
We'll try it and see how it goes. If we get a lot of objections, then
I
people.
kind of like Kitty's
Oh.
idea, because honestly, I think what's going to happen is you're going to have the fight about whether to read them separately on the floor of town meeting, and it's going to take longer anyway.
You
I
could
mean,
Uh,
You could vote to waive the reading,
you could vote to waive what?
waive the reading, individual readings, and see if that passes.
Well, that's a thought.
You do it at the beginning,
Yeah,
yeah?
that's a thought.
That way you give everybody a chance?
Yeah,
That
I'm
would be better.
good with that.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
great idea.
Yeah, thanks, David. I wouldn't have thought of
They're
that.
not all pearls, but some.
Next time we'll just have Dave present.
Yeah,
All right, thanks, Mary.
okay, thanks.
It's excellent. Okay.
Chair, I would like to note that if the average town meeting that Paul's gone to is 5 hours long, that means he spent 6,070 hours or 253 24-hour days of his life at town meetings. So I think you may need some counseling.
And
And you, Mr. Chair, have spent 5 days, 24-hour days, so you may need some counseling too.
And all of that was at the last special town meeting.
I'd also challenge Mr. Giaimo, his eggplant, I'll put it up against my apple pie.
Did you win a prize for that, too?
I did.
There you go.
There
See?
you go.
That's why the Grange Fair's so great.
That's why you're there and I'm here.
Yeah. All right. Next item, we don't have our town clerk yet. Have you checked into whether she's on her way?
She wasn't downstairs.
David, did
I tried
did Carol know
contacting
she
her.
was supposed to be here so we could sign this?
Yeah.
Okay.
She was scheduled for like 7:45 or something.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, so we're just so efficient that we're ahead of time? Okay, well, I'm sorry. Let's see, consideration of town meeting warrants. David, you want to go through this timeline?
Yeah. Basically, we want to have, I can't find the timeline, but we want to make sure that the warrant is completely voted and signed by the selectmen before the advisory hearing.
Yeah, so that looks like
Advisories.
here, we would have to be closing the warrant, I'm sorry, the mail notice on March 8th, that's pretty soon.
It's just the notice
That's
of
a
the
no-
hearing.
Oh,
hearing
okay.
notice, yeah.
Not the
So when do we have to sign this by? That's the one thing I don't see on here.
We want to get it signed before the advisory committee hearing, so, but I don't know what the next meeting dates are. If you're meeting on March 8th, it'd be good to sign the warrant that night.
One thing about the advisory committee hearing notice, it does say, please contact the selectman's office if you'd like to see a copy of the warrant.
So
So
it
we
should
should
be
really
ready.
have it signed before that notice goes out.
Which is March 8th, which means we're going to have to schedule another meeting between now and then because we don't have a warrant
Well, we were,
language yet, do
we were using March 8th as a target.
Yeah.
We have a draft
Possible.
warrant, and we could tonight go through each
We
of the
can.
articles.
I think we haven't even
We haven't
seen
talked
some
about
of
most
them.
of
Yeah, we
them,
haven't
yeah.
talked about a number of them yet, so I wouldn't.
I don't
go
think you
for
should
one.
vote them. That warrant hasn't even gone through council yet to be signed off on.
But if
I'm
the
not
notice,
proposing
It still has Mark Brandon's name on the last page,
if
so.
the notice goes out on the 8th and we vote on it the 8th, it's
That's
available
fine.
by the time people get the notice.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that there be a number of meetings in which we go through the warrant and perfect it. And the fact that items haven't been discussed before suggests to me even more strongly that we should be discussing it tonight and every other night, so that we can check off things that we don't want to have anything further on, and stuff that we feel we need more on, and try to get some consensus on what's on here. And I see on this draft that the staff has put on articles that we haven't voted to put on the warrant yet.
Mhm.
So a lot of things have been thrown on here. But if we wait in the ordinary course of events for a warrant sponsor to come to a meeting and make a presentation, we're gonna miss the deadline. Because essentially we have now and maybe one other meeting to go through all these articles.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with
Yeah, I think maybe should we just run through the warrant right now
Yeah,
and see
and
where we see
flag
the ones that
things.
we still
Actually,
need to?
There's only one article, it's the town clerk's article that hasn't been voted for inclusion.
Well, that's not, I don't think.
not
I don't think that's true, not yet.
That's not right.
Well, other than, the beginning ones are all standard articles, standard financial articles, and then the capital items.
No, there's things in here like
No, there's
recall of
stuff-
financial
we've got-
officers,
we-
Nancy
yeah.
Hess.
We've got a bunch of stuff that we haven't voted on yet.
No. Voted for inclusion?
Right.
Or voted a position?
Voted for inclusion. There are things we've not voted for inclusion yet.
I gave everybody before the meeting a new one that Jeannie had typed up, and it's got a paper clip. It's actually stapled.
I don't see that.
Oh, it's behind the,
It's
On top of your budget book.
it was
I don't
underneath.
have a budget book, so.
No, it's right there, Michael. You just moved it. Here,
I moved it.
it's right underneath. Here, take this one.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I know it.
Yeah, I just,
Okay.
we get too much paper around here. All right. So should we walk through this,
Yeah.
Paul?
Yes, that's my
All right, let's do
suggestion.
that. Article 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, we don't need to talk about. 10,
10, we still need
We
to
still
talk
need
about
to
whether
talk
to
about.
include some of these items, I would
Right.
assume, because we,
Because we haven't done the capital
we haven't had
budgets at all.
presentations even on some of these yet, so.
Okay.
I think one thing I did want to bring up after last meeting, we talked about wanting to wait until the capital committee. But I think especially for items coming from police, CM&D, and fire, I mean, we should, since they kind of fall under the Board of Selectmen, shouldn't we be voting on whether we think it should be included or not?
Yes.
Even before capital votes whether they support it or not.
In a normal process, we would have had the capital budget done back in the fall, end of summer, and that's the
Right.
process
And-
that
and
would
we
be.
would have had the people in here to do these capital items. And I know we pushed some off last week because it was going so long, but
So we're gonna review these?
we're gonna have to get them in at whatever the next meeting is.
But could I suggest that we put a star on Article 10? And Articles 1 through 9 we're okay with. Let's skip Article 10 for the time being and go on to 11.
Yeah. 11 is, do we have to pay the Dover Sherburne Regional Schools? I think we do.
They're gonna be in here tonight to discuss this, but I think this is an article that we've had on the warrant for almost
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah, I think we would just put this on there.
I think it should be on there.
All right, free cash is a
That's a standard
standard article. All right, next, we've got the article that Nancy talked about last week that I believe we did vote to put this one on.
Yes, we did.
So that would be Article 13.
It's just a technical problem. It's not so much that you're accepting a statute, you have to actually adopt a bylaw. And it's in the bylaw where the details are important.
Well, that's where David said council hasn't, I would assume when town council reviews this, there's gonna be changes like that.
But that's got to get done quickly, is the
Yeah,
point.
but I'm saying as a town council myself, there are policy issues that go into how you want this to operate, there's some ranges of freedom. So somebody like Nancy needs to write out what it is that she wants to have.
She did. She talked with us about that the last time. She gave us some information on that, as a matter of fact.
But there's nothing in a form to give to the town council.
No, but we did get her proposal last week, and it wasn't just this, it also had the scope of a bylaw on it, which she took from another town.
Yes.
I believe it was Sudbury, maybe,
Carlisle.
Carlisle.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so that should have been in here.
I'm trying to move it along so that we have a warrant to sign, and we
Yeah.
can't, we
The
couldn't
next, the
sign a
next,
warrant with this.
yeah, okay, so next article.
It's
we-
already
we-
on.
We voted to put that on, and it has language. The next article, George Shea's talking about tonight, we have not voted yet. The next article, the electronic voting article, I believe we did say we would establish a
A committee.
committee, so that one's on. Recall of finance officers,
Hold on.
we've never come up with language on that one yet.
You just said about the electronic voting was on,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that
but
the
you
one
could
we-
establish a committee on your own. I thought that's what
Oh,
the
that was
result
right, we could establish a committee on our own, so it doesn't need to be on here, was that what it was?
Was
Right.
that,
Yeah, that's,
Oh, yeah, that's
yeah,
actually.
Paul had said that, so with that one comes off. Recall of finance officers, we just don't have language, I know I've talked with Nancy about trying to help find her language, but we don't have that language. Dog licensing, Carol's gonna come in tonight and talk
this
to
was,
us
this
about
was the
that, right?
dog, this was the dog article that we talked about with the police department last week.
Oh, this is
that
the
we
police
voted.
dog, we like
Yes.
this one.
Yeah, this
That
one-
was the one that we,
Good. All right, so that one's in.
Right.
All right, now we're on page 5.
and these are the zoning
The
articles.
zoning ones, which are all in.
Those are all in, right?
Let's see, did we talk about the farming one the last time too? Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did, open
Yep.
space, we did.
Just in terms of order, if you put all the zoning articles at the end of a warrant,
Nobody
my
will stay there.
experience is that people get up and leave
They do.
just before, or when the first zoning article comes up, they all start to,
Based on what George says, they have trouble sitting through the whole budget, so I think they're never gonna get here. They're never gonna stay through these zoning
They stay
articles.
for specific articles.
Okay, so we got through these zoning articles, we'll figure out the order later. And now we see, to see if the town will vote to allow the town moderator to create a governance task force. I think we did say we would put that on, right?
Yes.
Okay. Next, petition for a special act relative removal of oh, this is Nancy's financial officer's article. So it popped up again here.
Which one?
It's on the bottom of page 14.
The last article, about 2/3 of the way down on page 14.
It's right here.
Yeah, this was draft language that I don't think we ever settled on. So this one needs to be discussed at some point, probably at the next meeting. Okay? And then, we have nothing else on here, right? Do we have anything else? No?
Nope, that's it.
so rather than having two separate Nancy Hess articles, can we delete one or the other?
I think what happened, Paul, was I put together some language to talk about with George and Nancy, and it's made its way into this warrant as the last article, but it hasn't been It was nothing anybody ever settled on, and we never discussed it as a committee.
What I'm saying is, can I delete this one on page 3?
It's
It says recall. of
Yeah,
financial
okay, we
officer.
should delete the one on page 3, that's fine. Okay. All right, good, I think we're in good shape now. That was a good idea, Paul. All right, next, we do have our town clerk now, so we can have our treasurer talk to us about bonding.
Thank you. So as mentioned previously, today is the day that I want to do the signing, and two things would have to happen. The first one is we have to do a vote of the Board of Selectmen, and this has to be signed by the clerk of the Board of Selectmen, or Mr. Yan, so I have the copies here. We have to get 4 originals signed. You can read it and go through. I have the originals here to sign. And that will be witnessed by the town clerk as well, so that we can have everything sealed and stamped correctly. And then I have actually all the bonds and everything set up in the next room, so I'm hoping that before you go to executive section, after we get this, it probably would take 10 minutes, everything can go around the table once, everyone can just sign, and we can get them into.
Okay. Does Carol have to witness that, too?
No.
Okay.
She witnessed this award, she will have things to know that you're allowed to sign it, and then you can go through the signing, and then I
Great.
have them picked up.
Fantastic, good.
Could I commend you on the town's bond rating? I was reading this report from, I guess, Standard & Poor's,
Yes,
and they are maintaining us at a AAA, which is a fabulous rating for a town of this size.
right.
And as I read all of the criteria that we met, I wanted to thank advisory. George, you were the chair of advisory during that time when a lot of that happened, so I want to commend George and the advisory committee for their leadership on this. This is really good news. It's going to save us money on this bond. It reflects well on the community. It says things are going well. When you read it, it's so complimentary to the town, to the management, to the people, to the productivity, to the economy of the town. It's a great report.
It really was, and I really have to thank David and Sharon and Diane for all their help and for being involved on the conference call with Standard & Poor. It was a nice team effort.
Great.
Well
Thanks
done.
for pulling that together.
So
Okay, so what do we need to vote now?
So we need to do the motion.
Okay, somebody has to make a motion,
I
right?
move the motion as prepared by bond counsel.
Second.
Moved and seconded, the motion as prepared by bond counsel. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, okay, so that authorizes Chuck to sign.
And I'll just wait, hopefully to catch you before you go into executive session.
Okay, that sounds
You
good.
just need one vote?
Just need one vote, and then as long as you're able to sign tonight,
Is there a double motion, Paul?
Okay.
Yeah. Mine's in my car. I've got one. Give me another one? I don't want a second one. Okay, great. It does say here we should vote to sign the closing documents.
So moved.
Yeah, okay, so it's moved. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. So we'll sign this. Fantastic.
Doesn't Chuck Yan charge extra for signing all these documents?
Yes. Charges by the letter of his last name. Notices of intent, I think we're up to, Madam Clerk, do you want to talk with us about dog licensing? If you could come to the table, it'd be great, thank you. And thanks for coming in to witness, too.
My pleasure. I didn't expect you to be ahead of schedule.
You underestimate us.
This is very straightforward. We seek to change the deadline date for licensing dogs. a long time ago, the deadline was the tax deadline, April 15th. And my predecessor thought that was a good date to use because it's something most people remember. We found that with an extended period of 4 months to license your dog, everybody still waited to the end. So we shortened it, moved it up to February 15th. And that's worked fairly well, but it's confusing to people. They don't know if the 15th is the last day or the 16th is the last day. So we decided to try March 1st, or the first business day in March. And we think that might just be a little bit clearer for our residents.
So all we're really doing is we're
Changing
voting to
the
just
date.
change the date in the bylaw, is that what it is?
Yes. And
Okay.
I believe attached to the NOI is the proposed
Yeah, we've
bylaw
got,
change.
we've got language in here,
Yeah.
just.
And it's literally taking out February 16 and putting in March 1st or the first business day of March of each year. That takes care of when March 1st would fall on a weekend or a holiday.
Okay.
So I would say,
We need the word year at the end of this word each, at the very end of the sentence, Diane. Section 3 of the article,
Okay.
or I guess it is section 3, just add the word year at the end of it, it drops off after each.
Okay.
Okay.
so I would say that this is a matter within the jurisdiction of the town clerk. If this is what she wants to do, we certainly should put it on the warrant.
Okay,
Give her
second,
an opportunity.
all in favor of that? Great, thanks, Carol.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, and now we have Mr. Shea with a proposal.
We all have the same document, I hope.
Yes.
I want to apologize for the delay that I caused at the last meeting. I was very busy that day, and I threw my files together, but didn't necessarily organize them very well. So I had in my files what you have on your desk, but I also had several other varying proposals on the same subject. But tonight I have what you have. I don't think that this is necessarily, well, let me start over again. I'm asking the Board of Selectmen to adopt the proposal that's on the table as their proposal and submit it as their warrant at the town meeting.
That's it. Do you want to read it or anything? I mean,
It's 2 lines. That's
two lines. All right, just for the public's benefit, do you want?
For the public's benefit, sure.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have you at the microphone for no reason, George. We could hear you.
Don't be nasty. A member of the Board of Selectmen shall, during the term for which he or she is elected, or was elected, or appointed, be ineligible to either by election or appointment to hold any other town position.
Okay, thanks. I know people will have various comments. 2 comments on my part. One's just a technical one, which is you can't appoint a selectman, so I would,
Well, I wasn't
We
sure that you
appoint.
couldn't fill a position.
can't. That's why George had to run unopposed.
Then we could strike that word.
Yeah, so the or appointed
Yes.
language, we can come out. And the other was a question that I think you and Paul got into a little the last time, which is there are certain circumstances in which someone who's on the Board of Selectmen might be an ex officio member of another board or actually be on a task force or something like that. So they're appointed to a town position, but it's by virtue of them being a selectman. So I don't know if there needs to be some clarifying language to account for that, or how that would work exactly in your way of thinking on it.
Let me ask you, if we put that language in, would the selectmen put it in as a proposal, as a warrant under their name?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea.
Well, we could ask for a vote on that.
Anybody else have comments on this item?
I had a question. I was confused at the last meeting, George. I thought you said that this was going to be limited to a compensated town position.
No, I don't think I said that. I said that that could be that could be a modification, yes.
Because I see the memo going to and from town council refers to compensated
Yes.
employment positions.
I thought that was the discussion that we had last time as well, because of the idea that in a town our size, having an appointment to different committees as a selectman,
As a selectman, I don't see a problem. If the person is being appointed as a outcropping of the duties of the selectman. Let me give you the three primary reasons why I think it's appropriate to do this. And I don't want this to be in any way interpreted as a negative regarding the person who brought this to the selectmen's attention initially. I don't believe that the arrangement of having a selectman serve in a position, department head position, or any other position that has a budget, is conducive to an optimum management position, management structure. You've got, notwithstanding the town council's original opinion on this particular issue, yes, the selectmen do not supervise the position that was in question. However, the person who was going to supervise that position is in fact being supervised by the selectmen. And it occurred to me that that just didn't make for a good flow of responsibility and accountability. As important, I think, is that the arrangement allows for, or deprives the voters, when it's used, deprives the voters of full representation on all the issues that come before the Board of Selectmen. One, or the first reason is that one Board of Selectmen has to excuse himself from both the discussion and the voting. That means there's one less person that was voted to do that job doing it. So I think that that is another reason that it should not be allowed. And the last reason is that even with the selectman removing him or herself from the voting on the budget that he or she is responsible for, that leaves open the speculation that votes by that selectman on other budget items will be influenced by his loyalty, and that's appropriate, to the department or budget that is not his, making money available for the other requests of that department or of that budget. So for those three reasons, I think it makes sense to bring us back under the same restrictions that apply to cities and towns that are larger than Sherborn. And I don't believe that Sherborn lacks a population that could not produce sufficient interest in positions that might be filled by a member of the Board of Selectmen, either paid or unpaid.
So George, a couple points on
Sure.
those arguments. One is, in terms of budget, would you apply the same standard to advisory? I guess they can't have a town position while they're on advisory, or any, because we don't actually,
No.
we don't actually approve budgets, right? Town meeting approves budgets.
Yes,
We
but
recommend it and
you
vote.
make a recommendation.
Secondly, would you exclude teachers, police officers, firefighters, CM&D workers from being able to run for selectmen?
No, they can run, they just can't serve.
Okay, would you exclude them from being able to serve as selectmen? Would you require them to quit their job?
Yes,
if they were elected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Despite there being a specific state statute that says that they can for towns of
If there was a state
35,000 or less.
statute, you'll notice that there's no notwithstanding provision. If the state statute says that they can do it, I suppose the state statute would prevail.
Well, that's exactly my objection. So I'm sorry to sound like a lawyer, but I'm going to vote no on this.
I didn't expect you to vote yes.
And there's a couple of reasons. First of all, the great and general court that passes legislation in Massachusetts has discussed this issue
Yes.
and has decided that, in their judgment, communities less than 4,500 in population
Yes.
should be allowed this flexibility to have selectmen serve in multiple positions, because their experience is that works well for the Commonwealth. And I would say that the town of Sherborn, with all the housing developments that we have been seeing coming across our desk, is at this point only 300 short of that of a change in that law. If all of these developments take place and more people end up being part of this community, there would be a change in law. But right now,
There'd be a change in the application of the law.
yes, the law won't change, but the law under which we are operating now would change by itself naturally, without the need for a town meeting vote at all. You're trying to second guess the general court and say, well, I know better than all of the work done by the general court, and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. The second reason I'm going to vote no on this is that I think it's too restrictive in a variety of ways. I think selectmen in a small town, I have a friend who's a selectman in a small town, and he has to serve 5 different positions because he can't find anybody to fill those positions. So he is holding multiple offices. You'd be unable to sleep at night, George, listening to all the jobs that he has. But the reality is that sometimes it's very hard to have people come forward and do a lot of work. And pay for municipal officials is not very good, and they have to be filled. You have to have people do these jobs. And the other half of the coin is that you are disenfranchising and preventing people from running for office, all of whom have any kind of municipal employment. Any kind of
No, that's not
committee
true.
member who wants to be both a selectman and a committee member essentially can't serve. So it's hard enough to get people to come forward and run for the Board of Selectmen. And I can say that from my years of experience trying to encourage people to run for the Board of Selectmen. It's very hard to get them to run, but if you tell them that people who serve on advisory can't really run and serve, and planning board can't run, and school committee people can't.
Paul, none of those, the last two don't
So,
apply. Your arguments don't apply.
I have the floor, George.
I don't care whether you have the floor or not.
Can I finish
It's
my
my
points?
presentation.
George.
It's
Let's
my
do this orderly.
presentation.
It's my meeting.
Yes,
Let's
it
do
is.
this orderly, George.
Did you recognize him?
I recognize Paul. Paul,
Okay.
finish your
Go ahead,
statement,
Paul.
please, and then let George respond.
So people cannot, under this statute, if somebody is holding some municipal position in the town, they cannot be a selectman. So they would be forced to choose between doing something that they may very well love, and that's why they have done the job for a long time. I'm reminded of the person that we had being our transfer station recycling coordinator for years. She did that job. Well, if she wanted to continue to do that job and be a selectman, boom, we have this bylaw. She can't become a selectman, or she has to give up that recycling job that she did for so many years without pay, for which the community owes her such a great debt. This doesn't make any sense to me. And in fact, I think it's harmful to the town. It's harmful to our volunteer base. It's harmful to the operation of the government, so I'm against it.
George, response.
My response. I think it was Daniel Webster who indicated that no honest man could sleep when the general court was in session.
I didn't expect that argument.
I think there was some wisdom in that statement. I don't know if you know that my background, professional background, but I served as the general counsel for the Mass Teachers Association, and in that capacity, I had some exposure to the legislative process. I wouldn't suggest that every provision that comes out of the general court is the result of hard work or intellectual exposure, or even the discussion of the issue, but oftentimes is the result of very effective lobbying. Now, I don't know who lobbied for this particular proposal that now applies to all but small towns, but it's there. I don't know the process, how it got there. I do know the process that takes place at the general court, however. And I would suggest that that's not a legitimate argument for any attempt to move beyond what they've done. And finally, Paul, what are you going to do when your predictable prediction that the population will soon cause the town to come under the provisions of the law that's applied to almost all of the major towns, cities and towns in the Commonwealth? All the issues of he can't do this or she can't do that will become apparent, and you're going to have to deal with it. So what's the difference whether you deal with it today or next year or next month?
So
If
can I
the
answer-
law applies, it applies.
So can I answer this?
You can do anything you want. I don't recommend.
Yes,
Yes,
you can do your
sir,
sir
rebuttal.
rebuttal.
Well,
It's Mike's meeting, as he reminds me.
Go ahead.
I also do a lot of work with the general court in connection with various things I do for the state. And in my younger day, I served 3 speakers of the House, 3 separate speakers of the House, and wrote a lot of legislation and was intimately involved in the legislative process. And I believe your attack on the general court is unwarranted and unfair. There is a deliberative process. There are
We're getting a
people.
little off track on this particular piece of.
Well, he's
of-
saying just because the
No,
general court
I
did
get
it.
that, but this would be an excellent debate, but we should do that in another session. We should talk about this warrant article.
Okay, well, then-
I mean, you know, we could
Okay.
go to the community center and debate the legislature, and I think we'd probably fill the House. I think that would be good, and I would love to see you guys do that. But we have something. I guess I would say one other thing, George, here. When I started on the Board of Selectmen, I was still on the Board of Appeals, and I had to stay on that Board of Appeals for a year because we had some matters before the Board of Appeals that I was the quorum for. We only have a 3-person Board of Appeals. It wasn't the most pleasant experience to be on 2 boards. I think it would be a rare occasion when somebody would want to be on 2 boards. I don't personally have any problem putting this on the warrant with some caveats. I do think that you want to be clear that somebody who's a selectman who gets appointed to this task force or that committee is not barred by this bylaw from doing it. I also really am concerned that a teacher or a CM&D employee or somebody who's, working at the transfer station in even a paid capacity is just simply ineligible to run for town office. That doesn't seem right to me. I would want to change that language. I don't know if I'd get the votes to change the language. I don't know if you'd support changing that language. I
I
suspect
would
you
have to see it
you
before I
wouldn't,
could
right.
make that decision.
But I don't have any problem having this issue, personally, having this issue debated by the town, because I think people are debating it anyway, and I think there's pros and cons to it.
There are.
And it doesn't, it doesn't hurt to have it aired. But I don't know what the rest of the board thinks.
I think it's
Yeah, I don't have a problem having it debated. I have a real problem with the breadth of this. I mean, I suspect that the MTA would not support this because this would prevent a teacher from being a select person. And I just
In
think
their own
that's.
town.
In their own town, and I just think that's, you're disenfranchising a lot of people that I'd like to see serve on this board. So,
And
and
honestly,
also
if you-
not limiting it to compensated positions.
Or even
I-
a call fireman in our town, which,
Or a tax credit, a person who works in town hall and gets a tax credit for it, they're an employee of the town.
Yes, they are.
They are.
But so
So
is
they
every
would
other
also be ineligible. I mean,
volunteer.
yeah.
But
Well,
it
there's a
doesn't
spec-
say, it says position.
Yeah.
And what's the definition of a position?
You tell me, George, you wrote this.
I didn't write it.
Okay.
I picked it up out of somebody else's, some other town,
All right.
which, by the way, also includes the Board of Selectmen, the Advisory Committee, and the School Committee, all of which I took out except for the Board of Selectmen. And I think the reason that my reasoning for putting it before you as only the Board of Selectmen is that only the Board of Selectmen is the chief executive body of the town. So if you can maneuver around that concept to make it broader to your satisfaction, I'd be open to any discussion you have on that basis. But when you have a body that's the chief executive branch of the town, responsible for decision-making as that body, it doesn't make sense to me that that body would be a member of those people that they make executive decisions about. The school committee doesn't make decisions about who gets hired or fired or budgets that are voted by the town meeting and recommended by the Board of Selectmen. So I don't have a problem with someone sitting on the school committee.
Okay, so what we should do is we should decide whether to put this on the warrant, and then we should decide, if we do, we should decide at our next meeting what it should say, and then George can tell us if he's gonna do a citizen's petition.
Well, I'd like to see it before the meeting.
I agree with what Chuck and Mike said, that I support the town debating this, but not with this vague language. I wouldn't support.
Well, I'm open to your suggestions.
Now, but I could see, like you said, at the next meeting, considering something that limits us a little more than this, because especially in a town like Sherborn, I mean, I would worry this would preclude a lot of people that would be very good.
I would ask, or call your attention to, that I can't find any example of where the Board of Selectmen was required to step in to fill a position that couldn't be filled in the normal process.
I think that's true. I don't think we've, at least in my experience, we haven't done a lot of appointing ourselves to boards and committees. We haven't had to do that.
Then the
But
meeting,
I did give you an example of when I had to.
oh, yes, yep.
Had involuntary
It's a
servitude on the
legitimate,
Board of Appeals.
I think a legitimate exception to
Yeah.
the breadth of
So
what I
George,
propose.
how about this? If we do have 3 votes here, do we just save it as a placeholder and come back to the next meeting with new language?
Can I make an additional point in
Yeah.
terms of redrafting this? To build on what you were just saying, Mike, I'm also concerned that there are a lot of ad hoc committees. If we appoint a new governance task force committee and think that it would be a good idea to have a select person on it, as drafted, this would prohibit it.
Yeah, I think there's an easy fix to that.
I
I
think
think there are a
the
number of easy fixes, so
selectmen-
I would like to have a hand in drafting it. So that's one of the reasons why I would support it.
I would appoint you to a committee to do that, Chuck, but I don't think I can do that.
I don't think you can. I've just changed my mind. I now support George's language.
It's my understanding that the selectmen are an ad hoc member of all committees that they appoint. Isn't that true?
Could be. Carol just said don't pay him, or somebody said that over in that area, but this is not restricted to compensated positions.
No,
right?
it isn't.
And I think that's intentional on your part.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. All
I
right.
just don't think this is ready for prime time, and I think we're out of time. And this idea that he's gonna go out and get a citizen petition, that's all closed. The time for warrant articles was back in January. They were supposed to have been in a lot better shape than they are now. And for us to be writing articles for others, what kind of precedent is that creating? So
A good
I'm
one.
opposed to all of this.
Okay. I just feel like, I guess I'm just kind of
I
feeling
think
strong because we have a AAA bond rating now, but I'd like to just move to put
a placeholder on the warrant for this article, subject to further discussion at the next meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you.
All in favor? All opposed? All right, thanks. Thanks, George.
And I'd ask the courtesy of seeing it before you bring it back to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah. Well, it'll be a public document. Yep.
Okay.
And we're gonna have the MTA weigh in on it too.
Are you?
I would suggest that the MTA has about 50 times the membership that you have residencies. So
All right.
maybe we could marshal up some support.
All right, out of time. The school committee's been very patient here, and the superintendent, so thank you.
Hello.
Andrew, Claire, hello.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
It's good to be here. I believe I know all of you, but for those who I don't know, I'm Andrew Keough, the new superintendent. Not so new anymore after 7 months, I have to tell you. I feel like I've been here forever. It's really nice to be here, quite honestly, in what was my second grade classroom.
Okay.
So I appreciate all the efforts that went in this town to refurbish this building. To some of the old timers like myself, it really matters. And I also appreciate the fact that I now have an opportunity to serve my community, similar to what you are doing. It's been a great experience for me. I do want to highlight the fact that I believe I have a great team in Don Fator as my interim business manager, and Beth McCoy as my assistant superintendent, Chris Smith as our director of special education. We've got a good thing going, and I truly appreciate all of them and their hard work, as well as the support of the school committee, and in particular Claire Graham. So to make it brief, we're here essentially to seek your approval of the IMA. And it's probably best that Claire speak to that. I know it's been a good thing for the communities, and if that's okay with you, just it's how you've been funding or going about working out your funding plans for capital and.
Right, so the IMA, as all of you know, because 3 of you have signed one before, and George has helped us get one approved last year, is the intermunicipal agreement that allows Dover and Sherborn to pay for our capital using whatever methods each town so chooses. So one town might use free cash, the other might bond, you both might use free cash, but that's out of the hands of the regional school committee once we sign the IMA. The IMA currently before you is for capital items that total $510,000, of which $221,289 is Sherborn's share of those items. The document has been voted and approved by the regional school committee, and simultaneously tonight, Selectmen are doing the same thing you're doing.
Do we have
But
anybody
without
over there
us,
to find
no.
out how they're doing with this?
No, I could text them.
This,
but
this is, our town council has advised us that this is the same
It is the same
text
language.
as previous years. This was heavily negotiated during the Caruso administration,
Yes.
and I think we're probably in pretty good shape with this.
Yes,
the-
I would say it's the same thing we've done in the past. We did go through it once, years ago, line by
Yes.
line.
Yes, we did,
Reached
Paul. I
agreement
was
with-
here for that with you.
Reached agreement with the regional schools and with Dover as to the final language. And this should be adopted. So I would move that we adopt it.
Okay.
I would second it. I would ask 2 things. One, next time, Andy, bring your mom along. She always helpful in these presentations. And the detail
She's the
would be
better
really.
Keough.
Oh, Don has a
Is one of the
larger
capital
sheet
items
of-
a bigger print?
I haven't-
Can I see you with this 510,000? Sorry about that.
We're trusting, but not that trusting.
400 times, 400%, I still can't
What-
read the damn
What's
thing.
before you actually, Chuck, is, I believe, the 5-year plan tonight and before the town is only FY19. We use Onsite Insight and have for many years to project capital costs for us. And so that's our working spreadsheet to
keep track of what's ahead of us.
And that was the follow-on question. Was this part of the insight recommendation and plan? Thanks.
Right. John, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
We had a lengthy meeting with your Sherborn Capital Committee on February 9th. So we walked through each of the projects with them, presented whatever quotes they requested, and as far as we know, they were completely on board with all the items that were slated for fiscal year 19.
Were most of these anticipated items? I know we've seen these schedules. When I was on advisory, we saw this, and it seems like it's right on track with where you've been. I don't know, Andy, since you've been there, have you seen new items come up that weren't anticipated, or?
No, actually, not very many at all. In fact, what I have seen is really across the board, really well-maintained facilities, and this report itself, you don't see that everywhere. It's thoughtfully done. The fact that you revisit it from time to time consistently is excellent. I think some things actually came off because it turned out that they weren't where they anticipated they would be. So I think it's an excellent report, and I think what's important for all of us to keep in mind is what's down the road, because we have some pretty significant projects coming.
And I will mention, if you're not aware, that we did our initial on-site and inside report 5 years ago. This past summer, we had all of our buildings re-evaluated, and they update the report. So some things did move around a little bit when they came back 5 years later and reassessed and added some new things that we had added on. So it's a great process, and I know you've got the towns of Sherborn just an on-site inside, so I highly recommend that you keep that re-eval on your radar, because it's very helpful.
Yeah, we're looking at it every year. There are two items on the list that I wanted to ask about specifically. The replacement of the roof for the high school and the middle school are scheduled for 2020 and 2022. Was the high school roof replaced during the major building project? And help me out, what year was that? I should know that, because Libby served on that.
I was gonna say. Yeah, we hit the
I honestly-
10-year mark. No,
Yeah,
probably
so
around
the roofs,
2004.
right, so the roofs are at their 20-year, and those reports are at their 20-year useful life.
Okay, so I just couldn't remember if the high school had a new, I know the middle school obviously had a new roof.
Right.
Because the whole building was new. I can't remember if the high school roof was,
Pretty sure it was done during the renovation.
but again, with 20-year life expectancy.
Right.
Okay, so this is on target.
And I believe, Dawn, that that had been reviewed. Was there any opportunity to shift the years for the roof, and that was found
But with
not
our
possible?
current, it needs to be redone. We're having some issues with leaks. We have done some repairs, but it's not where we can push that out any further. And that was confirmed when on-site inside came back this summer.
At the time of since we're just talking about the roof, I know this isn't relevant for this year, but are you going to explore solar when you do replace the roofs?
Yes, we've already started having meetings with solar reps to understand what our options are, so that we would marry the two if it makes sense.
So that's something that was high on my list right from the start, because the system I just came from, Easton, we had just gone through that whole process. And it was, I think, and we also installed the panels in Wellesley when I was the principal there prior to Easton. So I'm a big fan of that. You have to pay attention to the changes, though, in the benefits that come with it. It used to be really, really incentivized. I'm not sure if those incentives are still there, but we certainly want to look at that, and we've had conversations already about that.
Okay, great. Anything more here? We didn't vote this yet, so all in favor? Okay, we can sign it.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. And if your mom were here, we would have done it in half
Dawn
the time,
has the
Andy.
original
get it.
signatures,
This isn't the original? Okay, that's fine.
So
Go ahead.
Lynn, that we're slating,
that the region's already signed.
While we're signing, let me
I
just
want to sign a
say,
used one.
Just for tonight.
while we're signing, let me just say how great our school system is and how well-run it is, and how much it supports the property values that we have here in town. I mean, a lot of people choose to come to Sherborn so that they can take advantage of the school system. It is a wonderful thing, our school system, and your part in it is very much appreciated.
Thank you, Paul, and we appreciate the support of both the town of Dover and Sherborn.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you.
And good to see you both. We have next, we skipped a few things. We've got Sean on CM&D and then town buildings. Not capital for town buildings, capital for roads or CM&D, and then budget for town buildings, is that what it is?
Yes.
Budget for both. All right, no, David, before you got here, David took off the.
Not gonna do town buildings capital.
Gotcha, okay, that's what he took off.
It's a moving target at the moment. We will get there.
Did everybody sign that? Yes. This thing, did we give it back to them yet?
No, I'm reading it, and then I'm gonna sign it.
You're gonna read it,
But I
okay.
actually wanna read it before I sign it.
Oh, you're in trouble now.
Well, you are the clerk, Chuck, so.
Exactly.
Can we fly through budgets real quick?
Yeah, go
Do you
for it.
mind? I got three. I just wanna sign, seal, and deliver and be done. I think they got updated in your books.
They did,
Yeah?
Yes.
yes.
All right.
This is the updated info.
So CM&D, the only major change from last time is we dropped snow and ice back to the 82, 955.
Great.
Is that what the book's showing?
I'm getting there. It's right here. Let's see, that was at like 200, right, at the last meeting?
So which
Yes.
budget?
Page
Okay,
6 in
page
the
six.
CM&D.
Yeah.
Is the whole
Form
thing.
3, page 6.
I didn't carry my last
The-
version
the
back up there.
Last meeting, he still had it at the 202,000, but as we discussed, we wanted him to bring it back to the 82,000, so it was not above. We said that was the right level to keep it at, because that's a line item that we can overspend.
Okay, that's good, thanks, Sean.
Okay.
Everybody
All other
okay?
changes
I'll
we had
move.
talked about.
Can I move to accept the CM&D budget as or recommend the CM&D budget as presented?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor? Okay, thanks, Sean, that was good.
And the other one's town building.
Same thing, so town buildings, again, remember, this is like 5 that roll up into one, but on sheet 3, there it is.
The third page, yeah.
Mine didn't print in color, so it's hard to see.
This is
Building maintenance is 27.1.
You had it at
That,
80 last time.
and that's a total that comes from each building. Yeah, I ran it up to 80 to represent,
To make a point.
well, somewhat, but to represent not just, this has been, this 27,100 concerns me a lot to put it there. But I've been assured that if we're running over, we're gonna have to go for a reserve fund. That has basically historically been just repairs. If a pipe breaks, we fix it. That's where it comes from. There's no preventative maintenance coming out of that, except for the preventative maintenance contracts that we have. But there's no improvements coming from that money. But at the same time, we have a massive amount of capital.
That was
for
my
improvement
suggestion, that
programs.
since this year we still have a lot of the capital that we voted last year that hasn't been spent yet, this was probably not the year to increase this budget, just based on how much they were trying to find from, on advisory side in budgets to cut, and I didn't think this was the year to raise that from 27 to 80.
Okay.
Originally, this was submitted with over 100,000 increase. So
But actually, I
it's
think-
modest now.
Yeah, I think this
The
is.
original budget
where it
request
should
was
be.
100,000 increase.
Has the advisory committee's view changed with the cherry sheet numbers?
No, I think, I spoke to Steve Leahy about this budget specifically. I know the schools have left, but they have also come down, their budgets have come a lot closer in line as well, so I think they're getting a lot closer to that target number. Sharon and I were talking about it before the meeting. In Sean's, between Sean reducing the CM&D in town buildings, that kind of, our side is, not just, they're not just depending on the schools to come down, it's, everybody is taking cuts, and I think Sean made a great effort on bringing these down.
Okay, great.
So,
I'll move to accept the town buildings budget, or recommend the town buildings budget as presented.
Second.
second. Third.
All in favor? Okay.
All right, I snuck one up, but I didn't have a choice. So I just want to make a point on this one.
Which one?
Which one are we on
That-
now?
Oh, sorry. Transfer station.
Okay, thanks.
I printed the wrong one.
Yeah, got it.
No, there it is. It's not a big number, it's worth talking about, though.
In the transfer station budget?
Yeah,
Okay. Did we already vote this, though, or is it? so it
you might have, but I
changed?
just
Okay.
changed it.
Oh, okay.
I think you said there were contract questions.
Well, and we've been working on and still don't have, nor will we get, a contract in the near future from E.L. Harvey. If anyone's read anything about the recycle market, it's turned totally up on its head. Trying to shut the door to all recycling incoming, so this month, we got our first bill ever from E.L. Harvey. We've had a contract for, I don't know, 12 or 15 years.
Because they're not making enough
Because the
money.
recycle rates in Sherborn, we had pretty decent rates built into the contract, we were making money. We're breaking even on the paper that leaves, but the commingled actually costs us more right now to send to Harvey to be recycled than we spend sending stuff to the incinerator. That's how bad the recycle market is. So I wanted to cover that in the budget for next year, because in all likelihood, it's not just gonna turn around next month.
Right.
Have the rates
So-
gone up much at the Millbury? It used to be Signal Resco. I don't know if that's still the corporate.
It's
owner.
Wheelabrator, which is somehow under the umbrella of Waste Management.
And have the rates gone up?
We have
much?
a long-term contract
Right.
on the rates. I don't know what's gonna happen.
It did have an inflation, in that long-term contract had a little bit of an annual kicker, but not much, if I recall correctly.
It does, but I don't know if this trigger is built into there if the market really gets turned on its head.
Yeah.
Because obviously this affects the entire Waste Management, and it affects Wheelabrator, because there's things going to the incinerator now that used to go to China. And no one knows what's gonna happen. We don't have the capacity to use our own recycles in the country, so. We're a small fish, but it's a big deal. So we got our first bill. In all likelihood, they think we might see steady state for a while. It's a little over $2,000 a month to send the recycles out. So I covered that. I plugged 24,000 into that recycle number. And looking ahead, in all likelihood, we'll come up short this year, in 18.
I would move that we recommend the revised transfer station budget as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Just a question, we're gonna be short this year then, and you're gonna get a reserve fund transfer, is that what you just said?
My guess is 18 will probably come up short.
7,000.
Fortunately, it's flipping halfway through the year, so it may not be that significant.
What's that, Sharon?
About 10 grand, maybe. 10,000, John, about.
Will be the total expense, you think, or?
It just
Total,
kicks
or be,
in,
or be
yeah.
10,000 over, or, oh, okay.
Shortfall, yeah.
And in that budget, it's not like it can pull from another line, there's hardly anything
Right,
there.
okay.
Right. Right. Okay. All in favor of supporting the budget? Sean, just on that subject, I mean, are you in touch with folks from other towns, and nobody's come up with a better solution to this?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's been other notices that have come out, because some of the towns, a few months ago, paper hit first for some reason. And a few months ago, there was communities looking for relief from DEP. Because by its DEP regs, you can't just decide you're not gonna recycle. The state of Massachusetts says you will. There's no landfills to just turn around and dump the stuff at. So they were looking for relief. There's, on the higher scale, there is relief. Waste Management actually has waivers where if they can't lose it, they burn it.
So they have to take it from us, but then they can burn it
Right.
sometimes?
So, I mean, that's beyond our control, and they're not right now with recycles, with the commingled.
Yeah.
But it's basically getting stored, so the rates have gone through the roof the other way.
Right.
Other communities are obviously gonna get hit harder,
Right.
because they have way more volume, and I mean, it's in motion, it has to keep going, the stuff has to go somewhere.
Okay. All right. Thank you. What's next on here?
I don't think we voted.
We can kind of fly through capital.
Yeah, we voted.
Did we vote?
Yeah. Yep. So now it's capital.
Diane, did you give these to them?
Yes, everybody has a copy. I gave this to, because I got it right before the meeting started.
Under your yellow one. It's this big folded thing, right?
No, the yellow, under the.
Under this, thanks.
It's organized. Do you have an extra one of those so I can see how theirs is organized? It didn't start with the sheet. Flip to that, the spreadsheet.
Printer as the schools?
What's that?
Use the same printer as the school committee? What is this?
It printed differently on
Whoa,
hers.
guys, we have
I didn't,
trouble.
listen, I didn't build that spreadsheet. Talk to the finance office.
Oh, geez, Louise.
When you get a magnifying glass when you go home and you want to read that,
Yeah.
you'll catch most of what I'm about to say.
That's why I see this.
Is that 231 million, or is that 231,000?
When you get home.
All right, go for it.
So, the first item, it didn't print very clear here either. First item is a street sweeper. This is the first year in several, we're not buying a truck. We've been buying two, for several years out. No truck this year. The long-term capital plan that had been built showed the sweeper out next year and a couple more trucks, but we're not doing that. In your packet also, which you didn't look at, but you could, we printed up the last 2 years, 2.5 years worth of maintenance on the sweeper with a pretty low labor rate. It shows that we put $32,000 just in keeping the thing running. We lost it for the better part of a month last year. It had a critical failure of that rear axle. I don't know if you've looked at ours, but ours is like a 3-wheel machine. That thing sheared off the back. It's not a part that is normally stocked. It was expensive, and we lost the thing right in the middle of spring when you need to be sweeping streets. So and I didn't plot it, but the increasing cost says it's time for it to go.
Okay.
Well, if I could speak in support of having a functioning street sweeper, it's required under the National Pollution Elimination Discharge Permitting System for communities that have possible exposure of stormwater getting into bodies of water. You want to get the sand and debris off the roads because it's contaminated stuff. So when you run a street sweeper, the stuff that you collect, this doesn't go into somebody's backyard. It's actually contaminated stuff, needs to be treated and handled appropriately. So having a street sweeper is an integral part of the permitting process, so ultimately it's required. Now, maybe you can borrow it from another community. There are different ways that you can try and do end runs around it. But it behooves us as a community who cares about our environment to get the dirt off the street so it doesn't run into our drains and run into our wetlands and not get into our wells.
So if you had a magnifying glass, you must have been reading from that. The MS4 permit does require that we sweep. It's going to require more frequent sweepings. And being a town that likes to throw a lot of sand on the roads in the winter and a lot less salt, someone's got to pick that up. So we work the sweeper pretty hard. If you drive around right now, we've actually swept a lot of downtown, but a lot of the side roads you drive around, you can see. You don't see that in Natick because they don't buy sand. So we don't have much of a choice. We got 10 good years out of it. It's time for someone else to have it.
Is that a typical useful life of a machine like this?
As hard as we run them, yeah,
Because we only have one.
exactly. And no one's going to loan us one, not in the spring. Maybe in August if we want
Is
to
there
borrow
any
one.
residual value in this one?
There is. I can't pin a number on it because the way town meeting and the election lines up, I gotta use this one this year. I can't go auctioning it right now. It's worth a decent amount right now, but, we're gonna work it, its 11th year pretty much by the end of April. Fortunately, it's somewhat of an off-the-shelf item, so we can have one probably the week after the election, as soon as we have the approval. It's not like it waits a year like building a truck.
What do you think, George?
I mean, I think if Sean's saying it's necessary and the maintenance costs that we're putting into the current one, I would assume that this is a necessary item for the town, so. I'll move to, put this, I mean, is it to put it on the warrant, or is it to
Yeah, put it on the
support it? I think it's just to put it on the warrant.
Second.
Yeah, okay.
Hold on, wait, we're gonna change the spreadsheet a little bit, because
The warrant's just gonna have it listed as.
Yeah, it's just gonna have it listed,
Or
right.
sweeper
Okay.
with, now you have, the number we have on there is 225, but
It's actually-
is it
yeah,
230? Should be
yeah.
231
Needs
or
to be
whatever.
updated to this quote. This is off the state bid, but we
Right.
buy a slightly special machine, still pretty much in stock, but
Diane or David, I guess you'd just put it in as the 231,065 on the
Oh,
warrant.
65, yep.
it probably would have been fine if we trade, but we're finding that the trades aren't always working all that good. It's better to cover the capital and we can auction stuff off.
So I'll move to include the sweeper at 231,065 on the warrant.
Moved and seconded, all in favor of a sweeper? Okay.
The second is a radio upgrade. And I'll speak briefly. If we want to talk at length, we should do it with the red and the blue chief here at the
Yes.
same time. But we should at least throw it out there. I think.
Are these all
Can we,
consistent?
if we're gonna talk about radios with all the departments, why shouldn't we do it at our next meeting when all the
That's
departments
what I
can be
think
here?
too, yeah. These are consistent with
Or
what they're
David, do you
doing?
have something to say on this?
No, I'm just confused on the capital. When you voted to, you're voting these capital items to include on the warrant?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that interpreted as approve?
No.
Not at all.
To include it on the warrant.
we
Because
can't
they're
approve
your
it. It's gotta
items
go to
that you're
town meeting.
putting on the warrant. That's,
We are saying we
Are
are
putting it on the
putting
warrant.
on the warrant
Yeah.
this line item.
as the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
Okay.
So just to close the loop on the point that George was just making, the equipment that you're talking about needs to be compatible with the police and the fire. It doesn't have to be the same equipment that can talk to each other.
Yep.
So therefore, doesn't it make sense to, as George was suggesting, that we have them all together?
Well, I mean, I brought it up if we wanted to get in-depth about it. I mean, it can stand alone too. It's not a combined project with what, I mean, the chief is just buying more portables because he needs them.
Well, Sean's here, let's just hear from Sean on this.
Okay.
Plus, it'd be better to get my stuff on the warrant. We can debate it longer if we want.
One quick question though, is it a truck and radios together? That's what it says on here, it says truck and portable radios for 98,500.
Yeah, the way I wrote that, I was trying to be brief. They're truck radios and portable radios.
Truck radios and portable radios,
Right.
okay.
I was gonna
Or,
say,
well,
because earlier you said.
No, in the
no
radio
truck.
world, you normally call it mobile radios, but
Let's fix that one on the warrant, because people are gonna think you're buying another truck.
yeah, I don't use that word. Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah, I'm only supporting it if we get a truck for that too. Just say radio.
just put radios. Put CM&D radios if you want.
Just say CMD radio equipment,
For 98,500?
if that's the
Is that what
number.
the cost for your radios are? 98,000?
$598. So what this is, briefly, you'll recall, we have now 2 cell tower sites that have antennas on them. Each one has a repeater. Each one right now has 2 antennas, 2 repeaters, police and fire at each. What we didn't do at the same time when we added the Lake Street Tower was we didn't include CM&D. CM&D is still running a 481 frequency that was obsolete when I was a kid. It was the old fire radio that was obsolete in the 80s. They gave it to the CM&D. They're low band radios. They work like the old whip antenna walkie-talkies, and they frankly don't work. They work a little bit better in the winter than they do in the summer because there's no tree cover. But if a truck goes down to Bogastow Brook, he's in a hole and no one knows where he is. We don't have a base radio. When we knew it was obsolete when we tore the old building down because we took the antenna down and never put a new one back up. So those days are over. All the trucks have them. They don't work that well. It's time we have to upgrade it. We already reached out. Voorhees, the company that is our Motorola rep, has already petitioned the FCC for a frequency for us. We don't currently have it. We have a frequency for fire, we have a frequency for police, we don't have one.
So you need a frequency that doesn't overlap with them and with other towns around here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's already been done.
And to ask the obvious question, the new equipment on the Lake Street Tower, this radio equipment would be compatible with it. Is that correct?
Yes. This would be a repeater for each site. So there's a rack there with two and an empty space. It would be the third repeater for Lake Street, it'd be the third repeater for Hunting Lane. And some work over at the police station console, because there's a base radio there, and then a base radio at the highway garage, which we don't even have.
Well, this sounds like a fundamental public safety.
It is. If you can imagine what it's like in a snowstorm when there's a crash, if it's outside of downtown, the highway department guys actually have to grab their cell phone and notify the police that the radios don't work. They can't call each other. I can hear the cops because I'm driving around in a truck with a fire radio and a police, but the highway guys can't. It's totally dysfunctional.
What do you think, George?
As I said in the beginning, I mean, I just don't understand, I guess, the technology of it, but how is this, is there any, the radios that Rick or the police department's looking for, are they similar in any way? Is there any volume buying on that, or are these completely
They're quite
different?
similar. There's no difference in volume it's a fixed price off the state bid that if you buy.
I guess the question is probably more for David than for you, as the procurement officer. Would you be buying all the radios together, or would you?
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Okay.
But there's,
And we are, but
Standard.
they're all coming from the same guy.
yeah.
So Sean, how many of these radios do you buy? Just explain to me how this fit up works. There's 16 of some things, there's 2 of some things.
If you look at the item numbers,
Yeah,
see how there's item 1
yeah,
through 1 and 1A through 1H?
yeah.
Each one of those is a different subcategory. I marked one up that I gave to capital budget, but I didn't mark yours up.
Yeah.
And then there's somewhat of a note, but basically essentially the whole first page is the backbone. In there's a couple of whip antennas that go up on top of the towers, and there's the repeaters. It's the setup for the whole system. There's a bulk number in there for the installation. And then when we jump to page 2, all the 15s are still a quantity of 2. I think that's the 2.
Those look like
That's
the
2
control
base stations.
stuff, yeah.
So there's one at the police console, that would be one in my shop at Butler Street, and then there's 16, which ironically is item 16. That's each and every truck. The street sweeper, that's the equipment getting, your base radio, your mobile radio. And then 10, the last item, quantity of 10, there's portables, which are for when you jump out of the truck, or in the winter, you hand a portable to the contractors, which are pretty much 1-to-1 right now. We have a contractor with a town truck, and there's no communication between the two.
And these radios are $1,500 each.
Well, actually, that's something I wanted to raise. Is there different pricing for different departments? Because the identical, this APX 4000, looking at the order number from Voorhees, is the discounted price, the CM&D is $14.91, to the police department is $21.74, which is,
Yeah, there's different technology built into the police radio. They have a whole different digital frequency.
they are identical numbers
I-
on the order number, Sean.
They could have been quoted at different times, I don't know. But they're both coming from George Voorhees.
They're both George Voorhees quotes.
They're
Right.
both off-state contract. It's a technology contract, so one of them's,
The good thing is our town administrator can look into that, Chuck, and tell us what the right price is.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's
yeah,
just,
one of them's wrong.
Well, probably the police are made out of gold and the CM&D is made out of coal.
Recycled cans.
I'm sure there's a reason, but I don't have the 2 in front of me to
Okay.
analyze it.
All right, so this is good. What do you want to do about putting
I
this?
think we should talk, I would wait on voting on this one until we talk to the police.
So till
About
next,
the
our
radios?
next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then because I'd like some, as Chuck said, I'd like some clarification on the cost of the radios that are the same item numbers before we vote on it.
But you don't want to not put it on the warrant because I don't
Yeah,
have
no,
that
I just-
clarification.
I don't like seeing a 33% difference
I
in,
Well,
agree.
should we put the radios on without a number next to them at this point?
That's,
Are we in agreement that we
Yeah,
would put the radios on?
yeah, I think we need them. I think we
Okay.
just need some
So-
clarification.
So
on the
all in
price.
favor of putting the radios on without a number next to them at this point? Okay. This is a hook lift? What is this, Sean? This is something different?
So, this sounds like a truck again, but it's not a truck.
This
So
was
last year, we ordered a
Part of
truck.
the truck.
Just to back up, I guess this is still more for Diane and David. There's no third item from CM&D on the warrant.
There isn't
Only
a
two items. There's the sweeper and then the radios.
There should be this other thing.
So I have the sweeper, then we have the truck with the portable radios, and then we have another one. that
That's
says
not a truck with portable
It's
radios.
just radios.
Radio equipment.
Then we have portable.
Mobile and
radios.
portable radios.
We're gonna call it radio equipment in that line, and then now we're gonna have a hook lift.
Which is the third item that's not.
So that should be hook lift?
That's a third thing.
Okay,
It's a
Hook lift.
completely different line.
okay.
All right, tell us what it is, Sean.
All right, so, last year, we approved 2 trucks,
Yeah.
one of which we're using now. The big one came in, the International came in just about a month ago. The other was a custom-built F-550 with a Ford chassis. Ford has decided the green's gonna be a special color, so it needs to be, they need to be grouped before they'll build them. We didn't make the 2017 year build, and it still hasn't even been built yet.
Okay.
So what that did was it gave me an opportunity to take a look at what we ordered, because it was ordered long before I started. And we were basically just replacing a truck with a truck. And all winter, we've had another truck sitting, because we don't use the chipper truck in the winter, except for if a tree goes down. We don't plow with it. And I'm looking for ways to reduce the fleet size. We hardly fit in the building with the amount of trucks we have, and we're not using them all. And certainly, we're not using a truck that doesn't even have a plow in snowstorms.
Right.
So a hook lift, if you've ever seen it, almost every town around us has them. Wellesley's been using them for years. It can be a dump truck, it can be a dumpster truck, and it can just drop its body right on the ground and go grab another one. So what that allows us to do is buy the truck built with a chipper box on it, except we can drop that and pick up a sander in the winter, because you don't really want to plow with a big chipper box anyway, because you start hitting all the trees that are low.
So you're saying the chipper truck we have now won't do that?
No, it just pulls the chipper around. It's
So-
just got a
so
big
you-
box.
So you would put a chipper, if I'm understanding this, you would put a chipper box on this new Ford truck that's gonna be green, that they haven't built yet, and then you're gonna put buy this hook thing in addition, and then you're gonna sell the chipper?
We were gonna just replace a dump truck with a dump truck.
Gotcha.
Instead of putting the dump body on it,
You're putting a chipper on.
we're gonna put a hook body on it.
Hook body, okay.
And then the quote that you have shows, for the extra money, we buy the hook, we buy a sander, the chipper box, and a small container that makes it like a dump truck, but it's a small dumpster.
Okay, but,
When
but,
is the-
but, so,
So essentially, I'm gonna get rid of 2 trucks
okay, that's what I'm
for the
asking.
one,
Okay.
And when was the chipper truck scheduled to be replaced?
next year.
Next year, okay. So next year, you won't be coming and asking for a chipper truck.
Exactly.
because
I'm reaching out a year, grabbing a truck, and just throwing it away, and for,
and that's a promise.
yes.
Okay.
I put that in the minutes.
And you can get some money for this chipper truck or not?
We will.
Okay.
I don't have a fixed cost,
Of course.
obviously, but, that's what I put in the sheet.
So
I'm
just-
estimating we're gonna get rid of 2 trucks now at $10,000.
Okay.
And the net from, the new truck will be 112,000 per the quote that we have from Minuteman Truck. That shows all that equipment. We already last year approved 78,000.
So you need the other 35. So then, how much will this, I think just for presentation purposes, when you're presenting this to the town, how much will this save next year when we're not purchasing another truck? How much, would that have been another 78,000 or whatever when you came to
Yeah.
us for a new truck next year?
Probably
So we're
more,
gonna spend 35,000 this year, so we don't have to spend 78,000 next year.
and take one, and take
The
one,
possibility of
one
20,000
entire
on
vehicle
a
out of the fleet.
Sale
Right.
on the
That
trade-in.
makes sense to me then.
Yep.
Wait, is the 20,000 net of the 35, Chuck? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Yeah.
So
I am seeing that.
You're moving to put it on the warrant?
Well, just a second. I think the 20,000,
The two trucks that we're gonna be selling
Or 10 each.
are 10 each.
but he's
The
adding
delta's
on.
34,000, based on the 78,000 that got approved last year, so 34,000, 20,000 on trade-ins, the net is 14, and we're avoiding 78 next year, so yeah, this is a
Yeah,
no-brainer.
Exactly.
Okay.
But you're gonna approve me the full number, because I need
35, right.
I need the truck
Right.
before I sell the others.
Yeah, absolutely. No, just,
Then the trade-in comes, but that's what we do with all the that's what we've done the last few years
Right.
with any equipment.
All
is
right, so
any
move to
trade-in.
put this modification on for 35,000.
second.
That's what putting
On favor.
35,000?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Okay. And Sean, you can work with David and Diane in terms of what you want to call this on the warrant, so people understand what it is you're buying.
Right.
So there's no word truck.
Well, there's no word truck,
Yeah.
there's no truck radio, there's no whatever. Okay, good. All right, next, what's the next budget we got here?
No,
Is that it?
budget.
Yeah, and then it's just
We need the minutes.
the meetings.
Budgets.
Next page.
Nice presentation, very straightforward, thanks.
What is it?
No, just thinking,
Oh, thank you, Sean. Yeah, no, that was.
presentation, that
That was
was
very good.
very clear.
Okay. Town administrator report, David.
I have nothing
You have nothing. Nothing to report.
to report.
Consideration of payroll warrant. Do we have that, Diane?
Right for the,
Or Sharon?
Yeah, I didn't see that in the packet here at all.
Yeah, it doesn't go in the packet. They've just been putting out, but Paul had asked a couple weeks ago to get these in the
Okay.
packet, so let's do that. All right. Do we have a motion? Oh, somebody signed with a heart because it was 214. That's very nice.
David.
Another heart. Wow, this is really, really special, David. Thank you. Okay. Do we have a motion on this?
Can I see it?
Yeah,
That's
go ahead.
into the packet.
I was in a good mood.
And what we do is, because David can't sign his own warrant.
Right, no, I know, we've done
vote
this,
on
we've
that,
done these
yeah.
the last few meetings.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah.
Paul,
Okay.
did you want to see this?
Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve
I'm
the
going to
payroll warrant.
abstain because it wasn't, and I didn't have a chance to
Okay.
look at it.
I'll second the motion. All in favor? Let Chuck review it. All in favor? Okay, great. Sign that. Next item, selectmen reports.
Did we approve the minutes?
Well, that comes after selectmen
Okay.
reports. I'm going in order. So, does anybody have anything to say on these minutes? Diane went through, she made some changes.
I'd move to approve. There was one typo that I've already given to Diane.
Okay. Figure if everybody else has read them, I'm not gonna go through them in any kind of detail now.
There's only one that I wasn't on.
Paul,
the
you
board
all
yet.
set with these minutes? You were okay? Okay, so does somebody wanna make a motion? Do you just make a motion?
You move to approve with the one typo correction.
Okay, and those are the minutes at 12:19, 1:11, and 1:25.
I'm just going to abstain because I wasn't on the board on 12/19.
But that's okay. All in favor? Okay, yeah, I mean, that's a myth that you can't vote on minutes when you weren't
We're on the
there.
board, okay, I didn't know.
Just approving the minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, so Diane, thank you. Look at this, 125. We are are we the best board yet, Carol, for keeping up on minutes? We gotta be close.
You're there, you have come a long way, baby.
Yeah, we really have.
Now, we want to be, I think that was part of the AAA bond rating was the,
How well the selectmen does it minutes?
yeah.
And now you would start to work on your executive session minutes.
Yeah, I know. I've already talked to Diane about, we are gonna start getting some of those out. We had a big run of those, as you know, last year, and we've got another pile, and all those have to be gone through with town council, so it's a little bit of an effort, but we'll start on that. There's probably a couple things. Yeah, there's a couple things we probably can get to pretty soon. As litigation wraps up, then you can release some of those. Okay, we have to set a new meeting. I mean, a next meeting. We have one on the 17th, which is our advisory hearing on a Saturday. I would say we should meet on we were gonna say the 8th of March?
Mhm.
Okay. We got that on hold, let's see. Is everybody okay with the 8th of March on this, 7 o'clock,
Yeah, that works.
March 8th? Okay. And then,
Ooh, Bloody Saturday's on St. Patrick's Day, so wear your green and/or orange as you prefer.
Does that mean we can drink Guinness at it?
I think so.
you can do what you want, yeah. We may need a hearing on the 15th,
Yeah, book it.
and then we can skip the following week.
Yeah.
All right? Paul, you okay with
15th.
those days?
Yes.
All right, on the 15th.
Carol, do you have a question?
7
Oh, sorry.
PM. Carol?
I was just curious, when you plan to sign the warrant?
Well, I think we're gonna have to do that on the 8th. That was the idea.
We talked about that before.
We
I
talked
think.
about that, I think maybe it was before you came in, but we went through the schedule. Paul pointed out that we're a little behind, and we're gonna sign it on the 8th. That's why we went through with George and others to see what's gonna be on the warrant, what's not gonna be on the warrant.
And are we gonna be moving to 7 PM for all of these?
I would like to do
I prefer
that.
the 7.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to get here from Boston and Cambridge.
Yeah, it just gets worse in the spring anyway. Today wasn't so bad, I forgot it was school vacation. I called David to say I wouldn't be here, and then there was no traffic on the way home, so. All right, and we do have an executive session. Do I have a motion for this executive session?
Yeah, here you go.
Jeez. Okay, this is a motion to go into executive session under Chapter 38, Section 21-2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel. It's the CMD Director, Facility Manager contract. The chair has determined that discussions in open session may have a detrimental effect on the outcome. I have determined that. The board may return to open session. I doubt we are going to return to open session. Do you want to still leave the may return to open session in there? Chuck, Paul, George?
Sure, why not?
I'm abstaining from this.
Well, then we're going to have to come back and close out. So,
Yeah, I think we should come back in.
you think we should come back in and close out if we need to? Okay. So I need a second and a roll call vote.
Second?
Second, Mr. Yan. Mr. Durensis.
Aye.
Mr. Yan.
Aye.
Me, aye, and Mr. Morrell
Abstain.
has abstained. Having passed by a vote of 3-0, open session is not closed. We may, let's say we may be returning to open session. And we are now in executive session. Okay. Do we want to go someplace? Oh, we have to go sign, George, before you leave, we gotta go sign bonds.
Probably have our